I knew something was wrong before the glass even touched the table. Not the kind of wrong you shrug off, but the kind that grabs the back of your neck and says, "Pay attention," and in a room like the Larkspur, chandeliers like dripping ice suits practicing their power faces, that voice is easy to ignore if you want to keep your job. But I've never been good at that, you know what I mean. Table 12 was three executives talking a merger, like they were moving weather systems, and one empty chair holding a navy blazer, a buzzing phone, and a kid leaning into his dad like he was tired of pretending he felt fine. And when I set another round down, I heard the soft drag in his breath, saw the flush that wasn't embarrassment, watched his fingers touch his throat, the way people touch pain when they're trying to be brave. The dad, Damien Kincaid, the Damien Kincaid, waved me off without looking, told me to bring his son another lemonade. The silver-haired doctor, Halpern, perfect cufflinks, perfect certainty, said seasonal allergies and nerves, and I did. The waitress smiled because that's what you do when your rent depends on other people's comfort. But the boy knocked his glass, the room stilled, the wheeze sharpened, and that morning's lecture from pediatrics rotation woke up in my head like a fire alarm. Quiet anaphylaxis kills kids when everybody is trying to be polite. I told my manager to call 911. He hissed, "Not tonight." I ran anyway, grabbed the spare auto-injector I carry, because my cousin is allergic, came back to a circle of power men, telling a blue-lipped child to breathe with them. And I knelt, said, "This will sting," and Halpern snapped that I wasn't qualified. And I said, "Hives, Strider, hazelnut crust on the scallops." And Damien finally looked up and said, "Do it." The click was loud enough to stop conversation. 10 seconds, 20. I counted like a prayer, his fingers unclenched. Air dragged in and then smoothed out. Color crept back. The room exhaled like it had been underwater. And I said, "Call an ambulance." Biphasic reactions are a thing. And that was the first time Damien looked at me like I'd just moved a planet with my bare hands. The next morning, a bouquet the size of a small tree and a check with more zeros than my imagination sat waiting. I didn't cash it. 2 weeks later, an email from his office invited me to the Sentinel Tower to discuss an opportunity, and I rode a glass elevator with shoes that suddenly felt too loud, ready to be paid to keep quiet, or corrected by someone with a nicer tie. But Damien stood in a room of sky and water, and offered me a job instead. Emergency Response Division, epinephrine, antidotes, real-world design, flexible hours so I could finish nursing school tuition, covered decent salary, the works. And I laughed, because who does that, then said yes the next day, because rent, because student loans, because maybe he meant it. For a while it felt like a movie where a scrappy kid gets a badge and a desk. Dr. Priya Shah in clinical advocacy said, "I had instincts you can't teach." Damien checked in once a week and left before anyone could get self-conscious. Evan, the boy, showed up with a new medical bracelet and questions that swung from smart to gross in 10 seconds flat, and I started sleeping and thinking in plans instead of panic. Then the envelope appeared on my keyboard at 7 a.m. Manila. No label, heavy, with the kind of paper that changes your blood inside. Were clippings and memos from 15 years ago. Apex Biodynamics. A pediatric asthma drug rushed to market. 17 dead, a memo from a vice president named Damien, warning the board to slow down because of a genetic marker risk. The board overruled the drug, shipped lives ended, and one of the names in a clipped article was a boy from Tacoma named Noah Lane, my brother. And the air went thin, the floor moved, and every reason I'd told myself this job was clean, cracked. I planned to resign, to walk out, to send a polite email and go back to double shifts and old coping skills. But life likes to test your timing. Yeah. That happened because before I hit send a text, lit my phone, Evan having a reaction in the lobby, injector, missing help. and I ran, found him slumped and pinking too fast, while his nanny tore through a backpack that had everything. But the thing asked for the backup. Wrong jacket. And I said, "We don't have time, the lab has prototypes and security tried to slow us. We didn't stop cabinet open rows of devices I'd studied in meetings. Adult dose only, but a timed delivery. I knew how to interrupt math in a storm weight risk consequence. I told Evan it would sting, pressed, counted to 1. 5 pulled off 5 seconds of quiet terror. Then a gasp, like a wave breaking hard enough to knock you laughing. And when Damien burst in, he dropped to his knees, and all the CEO fell off him, and he was just a dad whose kid was breathing again. He said thank you, like gratitude had gravel in it, and I nodded, because anything else was too much. That night, the envelope glared at me until a second message arrived. Anonymous, the real reason he hired you, parking garage B2 at 7, an attached photo of a young Damien, with his arm around a woman, with a dimpled smile and a small mole above her left eyebrow that looked a lot like the one I see in my mirror, and I went, because curiosity is a muscle and mine is overdeveloped, and a woman stepped from between 2 cars, like a plot twist in Heels. Vivian Halpern recently divorced from the famous doctor whose certainty almost cost a kid his life. She handed me another envelope and a story like a blade. My mother Lydia worked at Apex as a lead researcher. She and Damien were more than colleagues. She raised alarms about that drug and got silenced when kids started dying. She tried to blow the whistle. Threats followed the board chair. Conrad Ellery protected the stock price like it was his only child. And then the night my parents died on wet roads maybe wasn't an accident at all. Vivian said Damien always knew who I was and hired me out of guilt, said do whatever you want with that, and left me shaking under bad lighting. I went to the hospital where Evan was under observation, watched Damien reading by his bed. He saw me and led me to a consultation room built for hard truths, and he didn't waste my time. He said he loved my mother, said he stayed to fight from the inside, and he was wrong, said. When the deaths started, he tried to stop Ellery and couldn't, said. He helped put him away on financial crimes. Because murder wouldn't stick, said he couldn't prove my parents' crash wasn't an accident. But he never believed it was said. He recognized my name the night I saved his son, and didn't tell me because he wanted my hire to be about merit, and because he didn't know how to say, I failed you once. Let me build a world where that failure is rarer. And I laughed, because crying was too easy, and said statistically, and he took the envelope like it cut him too, and said, you can hate me and still save lives, both can be true. I didn't forgive him that night. Forgiveness is a word people throw at other people's wounds. But I didn't quit either. I took a leave, visited graves, read my mother's old notebooks, sat with the heat of anger until it cooled into fuel, came back in spring with a prototype in my hand and a program name on my tongue. The Lydia Lane Initiative, and data that said our timed safeguard reduced admin errors by 78%. We argued the board into a pricing model where a rural diner could stock the same device as a pro stadium, schools and restaurants first. And Damien said the board will adapt because sometimes doing right turns out to be good business. Evan popped in, grinning about a science fair and a slide with our injector. I ruffled his hair like survival could be casual. And for a second, the world tilted toward okay. People will debate the rest. Should I have taken the job at all? Is redemption earned or purchased or built, one protocol at a time? Do rich men get to launder guilt with good deeds, while the rest of us pay retail for our mistakes? And I ask myself the same questions on gray mornings when the lake looks like a mirror you don't want to stand in front of. But I keep coming back to the moment. A child's lips turned blue in a room full of certainty, and I did not ask permission. I did what the moment required. Then I did it again in a lobby because I had learned something and refused to keep it theoretical. And now a cafeteria worker with shaking hands can press a device and get it right, because a timing mechanism remembers the fear for them. If you were me that night at the Larkspur, would you have stepped in even if it meant your job? And months later, would you have stayed even with the history? Tell me where you land. Tell me what you've seen. The moment a title blinded a room, the day you got underestimated and pushed, anyway. The time you had to choose between a clean exit and a messy good. Drop your take in the comments, argue with me, back me up, call me out, because this one lives in the gray, and I want to hear how you walk through it.